That said, speaking of Whitworth, he's got his own stomping grounds of L.A. The playoffs have found themselves in L.A. again with the Chargers. I've said this for weeks. I will continue to say it. Are the Chargers the most dangerous team outside of the two Bs and KC? And what I mean by that is the Bengals, the Bills, and the KC Chiefs. I think they are. I really think they are. And it doesn't mean that I think that they're a good football team. What I mean is that I think that when they play at their best, when their offense is playing at its best, it is incredibly more dangerous than all of the other teams in the AFC. I don't care who comes out of the South. Pick it out of a hat. I could care less. Jags, Titans. Man, I would love to play one of those two teams first round. I'm being serious. I made a joke about it the other week, and I'm not half tongue-in-cheek, but I seriously think Jacksonville, more than likely 2 weeks ago, had to send out a memo to all the concession workers, all the ticket takers, all the people that do security to say, hey, we got a situation on our hands where we're going to have to play maybe an extra home game this season. I know that that's not been something that you guys are used to doing. Make sure you don't take those second and third jobs quite yet because we're going to need your help. They might have done that. So I'm not too concerned about playing those teams. I get the idea of wanting to play a home playoff game. But I'm telling you guys, and I guess some of this is obviously my Packer fandom coming out. But I think if you look at the Chiefs last year, I don't know if home field advantage is as big as we make it out to be in the NFL. Right? The Packers have had a home field advantage. The last two playoffs haven't won and won. Haven't gotten out of it yet. Right? Last year, the Chiefs had home field advantage. Got beat by the Bengals. Right? I would argue that the Bills should have beat the Chiefs. Right? I mean, yeah, you could sit here and say, but was it home field advantage for the Chiefs and why they beat the Bills? Or was it just that the Chiefs obviously made some incredible plays at the end and won the game? I guess my ultimate point is that the Bengals need to get healthy. They need time to be able to try to reset, recalibrate. You know, they haven't had a bye week in a while, right?
Yeah.
And not only have they not had a bye week, but they've been winning and grinding out wins. You know, I can think back, and I'm not be able to pull this up really quickly. But if you think about the Bengals games, they've not been cakewalks. You know, not a single one outside of maybe, I guess, when they played the Falcons and the Panthers, where you're like, hey, yeah, we could just pull the starters and take it easy. They've been grinded out games. And then now you got to play the Bills, and then you got to turn around and play the Ravens in a divisional championship game for the most part. I'm telling you, I'm crazy for saying this out loud, and people will crush me for saying it. But I genuinely think that if you win or lose against the Bills, I would consider resting my starters. Now, you're going to say, Trace, we can get the number 1 seed. I know, and it seems bonkers, but I'm just telling you, the Chiefs are not losing. They're not losing. They're not giving up that 1 seed. And if you lose to the Bills, I don't give a damn if you got a chance to win the division or not next week. You definitely don't play. Now, I will remind you last year, that playoff run you had, those starters got a rest. I know that you guys might have takes on this. I'm sure the chat is crushing me with it. I'm just saying, the wear and tear of the NFL will catch up to you. And I'm not saying Lionel Collins' injury is just because of that. But I am saying that it wouldn't shock me if you go against the Ravens that someone else goes down. And it's just a matter of time before someone else goes down. That is the NFL. So, to hell with home playoff games. You play in a weak AFC bottom-tier division. So, my point is, you're going to play, if you lose a division, you're going to play a terrible team. And then from there, it is what it is. You're going to have to play all the big teams in regardless. You're going to play the Bills. You're going to have to play the Chiefs because the Chiefs ain't losing. Fellas, you got any... I mean, I'm sure that that's not the most conventional wisdom thinking. But what's your thoughts on that?
Well, it's actually a blessing in disguise that they play on Monday, right? Because they get to see the Ravens and the Chiefs play one more time before they make that decision on whether or not they should actually play their guys, try to go for the number 1 seed. And And more than likely, the Ravens game is going to be like at 4:30 or something like that. That's a huge game. I don't think CBS or Fox would miss up on the opportunity to have that as their primetime slot, the last game of the season. So my thought is, you see what happens this Sunday against the Chiefs. If the Chiefs lose, you gotta just play the rest of the season with your guys. But if they win, I think there's a legitimate discussion that has to be had that the next two games, do we just take it easy, and because they're not going to lose the Raiders.
Chat wants you to turn your mic up a little bit, Casey. Just a little bit.
I would, if it were me, I would be looking at this as trying to get maybe the 2 seed. I think you go ahead and you try to win the division if you can, because I would take the home field. At the 2 seed, I understand you'd still have to go to Kansas City theoretically, but I would be playing for the 2 seed there. Now, you're not – I don't – Reed brings up a point in the chat. Do you rest the people against the Bills instead of against – I just don't see that happening.
That's not happening.
I just don't see that happening.
No.
But if you go into that Ravens game, I think it would be pretty tough, just one, as competitors, and two, as – an organization, to say that, hey, here's an opportunity in front of a national audience, potentially, like Casey said, at 4:30. I mean, there's a chance they could move the game into Sunday Night Football. Probably doesn't happen, but if you're talking about a national audience with the brand that the Bengals have built, all that, as much as you might not want to admit it, I think that all plays a little bit of a part into it, and it would be a tough thing for me to swallow to say that the Bengals have a chance to win the AFC North and they forfeit that, and especially with a chance to potentially get a couple of home games, not just one, but a couple of home games in the playoffs. Because if they don't beat Baltimore, then you're ending up with what, a 5 seed, and you have to go to Jacksonville maybe. Not that that's a hard task necessarily, but do you really? Wouldn't you rather play somebody like that? Would you rather play the Chargers at home, or would you rather go to Jacksonville?
I'd much rather go to Jacksonville. That's where my take is completely different than most. I just listen. I hear people in the chat. Reed's telling me that home playoff games only don't matter in Green Bay. Okay, well go tell the Tennessee Titans that. How'd that work out for them? Go tell the Chiefs that. How'd that work out for them? When was the last time you seen a team win at their home field? And I would argue the reason they win at their home field is largely because they're just a better team. You put the Chiefs against the Bills in Abu Dhabi, out in Qatar, and I think you get the same result 95 out of 100 times. I really don't think home field is that big of a deal in the NFL. It was proven last year. The loudest stadium in NFL history is Arrowhead Stadium. Joe Burrow took the boys out in the second half and said, to hell with the 21-3 lead. You guys can shove it. What's it matter? I really don't think it matters all that often. To the fan base, yeah, it's important. Is it fun to go down to Paycor and get loud and have fun? Yeah, hell yeah it is. I get to why you would want to have a home playoff game in that situation. But outside the fact of what's specifically on the field, I think it's so overrated. I really do. I think the better team more times than not wins, and it's not because they're playing at home. It's not. So you're telling me right now, do I have 2 options? I could go and play. And again, let me say something else. I know Zim is probably in his head right now or floating above us saying they got to play us. They do. The Bengals are a good team. This isn't about trying to avoid people, but I think there's something to the idea of having the easiest path of resistance to the Super Bowl. The Bengals had it last year.
Yeah.
They played the Raiders. They went and played the AFC South and the Tennessee Titans, who are overrated. And then they turned around and they had to win one more game to get to the Super Bowl. And they beat the Chiefs. So I'm just saying, I'd rather be healthy and go on the road and play. And again, I'm not trying to forecast ill will and say, oh, I told you so if someone gets hurt. I'm just saying the likelihood goes up if you play your guys every single week when they've been grinding for 7, 8, 9, 10 weeks. As far as the whole, whatever you want to call it, like the the winning streak or the mojo, I could buy into that a little bit. I think that there's some merit to that. And if you're not going to get the 1 seed, that's the best argument you can make to me, is that, Trace, if the 1 seed's available, you can't rest your guys. And to that, I'd say I understand. Because at the end of the day, the 1 seed is less about being at your home field. It's more about getting a bye, right? Then you get your rest. And then on top of that, you eliminate the opportunity to lose in the first round. So I don't know if I haven't, again, if I was in those shoes, the easiest thing to do is just to play your guys, because no one can argue that. No one's going to be able to look back and second guess you. But I am saying that there's some merit to the idea that if you lose the division, I think the path is easier. I do. I don't want to play the Chargers. And you know what else I wouldn't really want to do? I don't know how this lays out. We could probably pull it up now. I don't want to play the Ravens again.
Oh, back to back, basically.
So I just was messing with the playoff machine, and
God, I love this website.
If we win Monday night and then we lose week 18, we rest our guys.
Let's go, Casey.
And then, by the way, let's get into that really quickly. I'm so tired of people saying, "Oh, are you on the team?" Or you say, "Are you on the team?" Let me tell you about that take. That's a horrible take. If it wasn't for fans, there would be no professional football players. So if a fan wants to say they're not idiots. They're not trying to say that they're on the team. They're just associating themselves with what they like. Right? I mean, that's it. It's as simple as that. They're not idiots. They're not trying to be like, well, yeah, we're in the locker room with them. We're the reason they're winning. Well, I'll tell you what. All you idiots out there that are sitting here yelling at me about having a home field advantage, you're telling me you have a thing in the game. You're basically saying, Trace, if it's at home, we can make a difference. Okay, then stop being in the chat telling Casey and whoever else, oh, did you see that? He said what an idiot. I'm so tired of that take. I'm going to stop yelling at you now. But if I have to hear about people telling me, you shouldn't use are you an idiot? Are you on the team? Where's your jersey? Are you warming up with him? What time's practice today? Like, give it a rest. It's just a term to be used, associating yourself with a specific team. All right, I'll shut the hell up and let Casey go.
All right, so if the way I have this right here, if we win Monday and then we rest our guys, we would have the 5th seed. Baltimore would have the 3rd seed. And that's assuming that Baltimore beats Pittsburgh as well. Ravens would play the Chargers. We would play Jacksonville. And let's just say your Chargers that you really like beat the Ravens, right? They're at 6. Bengals play and beat Jacksonville. All right. I have Miami making it in, sneaking in over the Patriots. And that would be Miami versus Buffalo, at Buffalo one more time. Tua to finally maybe prove himself, and or Buffalo wins, regardless of what happens. The Bengals would play the Buffalo Bills or Kansas City or Miami. Right? I'm sorry. Kansas would either play Miami or Los Angeles. We would either play Buffalo or...
What's the first round matchups? Let's say on that.
The first round matchups is Miami versus Buffalo,
Right.
Chargers versus Baltimore, and Cincinnati versus Jacksonville.
We'll get into this in a second. I don't think Miami's making the postseason. I think that the proverbial wheels, or whatever term you want to use, have come off the track. I mean, Tua is the engine of that team. Now, I'm not saying he's the MVP or he's great or anything like that. I just think that as Tua goes, so do the Dolphins. And that's been proven throughout the year. He got off to a hot start. They were winning games. Casey, they were 8-3.
Right.
They're 8-7.
Well, this is their final 2 games. They play the Patriots at New England, and I have them losing that.
And by the way, they're 3-point dogs against the Patriots.
I have them losing that game. And then they play the Jets at Miami, which is why I'm like, they're probably going to make it in. The Jets are terrible. They're going to barely sneak in. And that's why I think that, plus it would be a really, like, script-wise, I think Miami going back to Buffalo would be really good, just for the NFL in general. But
yeah, I'm not a believer in Miami anymore. Obviously, I got to watch them play terribly, and a lot of it just has to do with Tua. I don't think the Packers are any good, if we're being completely honest.
Packers going to do this thing? Are they going to sneak in, Trace?
I'll tell you what, if they do, they're getting my – this is what I'll say about the Packers. I genuinely mean this. I'm just thankful that there's meaningful football to be watched like now. Because if you'd have asked me this like a month ago, I'd have been like, yeah, it's –
I have not
Completely.
watched this resurgence. Is Rodgers playing better? Is it what's the are they playing weaker teams? Like
I think they're playing weaker teams.
Okay.
I don't think they've really run into a buzzsaw quite yet. I mean, it's coming, but again, I feel like the NFC North is similar to the AFC South, where it's like there's not any teams that are that good. And the Vikings are just a Cinderella team, but I don't think the Vikings are all that good. So I just think it's like one of those deals where you sit out in a conference and, like in college football or something, to where everybody's playing each other, so you don't know how good anybody is, and then you realize after the bowls are over that the whole conference stinks. I feel like that's basically the Packers division. Now, having said all that and getting off the Packers back to the Bengals, I just say this about the Bengals. We'll move on to another topic here. I'm not worried about, if I'm a Bengals fan, playing anybody. I genuinely believe that. I think that the Bengals' best football can beat anyone in the AFC. Now, I have my questions of whether or not the Bengals' best football can beat the Eagles just by the style of play. And I would also be a little bit slightly concerned about the Bengals' running game from time to time. It seems to just completely disappear. And oftentimes, and as we've come to know, especially in the Midwest, and really all of these games are going to be played when they mean the most in cold weather conditions. You need to run the football a little bit in order to be what I would say consistent and successful. But to hell with consistency to a certain extent with the Bengals, because yeah, Jekyll and Hyde's great, but if things are going great, then who cares about how bad it can get? To a certain extent, I'd rather be like a roller coaster, like the Chargers, like I would argue the Bengals, and to a certain extent, even the Bills. Now, the Chiefs, I think, have the most consistency, but I really believe this. I think the Chiefs' best doesn't beat the Bills' best. I think the Chiefs' best doesn't beat the Bengals' best. So, yeah, they have the 1 seed, and that looks great, and they got Patrick Mahomes. We're not going to get into that today. But at the end of the day, I really do believe that the Chiefs could possibly play one of their best games of football and get beat by the Bengals. They could also get beat by the Bills. And we'll see what happens. But at the end of the day, the only concern I have for the Bengals is simply health. I don't give a damn where they go and play. They've proven last year they can go on the road and win. They can go on the road and win again this year. Is it nice for the city to be able to host playoff games? Yes. Yes, it is. It would be very cool to host the AFC Championship in Cincinnati. No one's arguing that. But am I worried about playing at home? No, because I don't think it means a damn thing.